So without further ado, I'm super excited to introduce Diane, who's going to get us started in our book club.
Thanks to Melissa for asking me to step in. I am so glad that I'm available to help her out in this situation. And as we read through this section of the book and we came to the concept of noble friend, I consider Melissa a noble friend of mine, and we have known each other a long time. I don't even remember exactly when we met, but it has been many, many, many years. So I just wanted to take a moment and let her know that um, that myself, as well as all of you, will be sending her the the love and comfort and compassion that she's going to need to get through whatever it is she's trying to get through today, and honoring her soul in a way where she realized she needed to step back from being the leader tonight. As we look at the questions, and I hope you had a chance to look them over, um, we're going to start at the beginning, which is the first question. Um, and this has to do with Liza's story from page 24. Um, Explore times that you have decided to respond or see something positively, and what gifts did that bring to you? Did anyone want to share their answers for that question? Okay, great, Mickey. I'm going to mute myself because we've had little trouble with it echoing. So I'm going to mute myself, and I'll give you, I guess we each have probably more than 2 or 3 minutes. Let's see, there's, because we definitely want to hear from everyone. And it looks like we have 12 people. We have, we probably have like 3 or 4 minutes each. Okay, so just kind of bear that in mind once you start. All right, thank you, Mickey.
I'll just share that I was happily married, as I thought it was a happily marriage. Have two beautiful children, and we were married for 17 and a half years. We were high school sweethearts, always had a very, bright, happy future with the kids and everything. And I guess we call it midlife crisis. I'm not sure. That's what everybody calls it, it seems like. But it kind of threw my world upside down. Found myself totally, since we were high school sweethearts, you always came as a pair. You always were two peas in a pod, whatever, always, together and everything. And it was very difficult to find yourself all on your own and realizing that, you are your own person too. But through it all, I took the time to really work on myself and got to learn myself, like got to know myself much better as an adult rather than, a person with you know, who was always one of two going through life, through everything. And it was amazing how now I can look back and I don't think I would be the person today who I am if I hadn't gone through that. I'm a much, I'll say, my relationship with my kids is so much better, even though we went through some rough times, and just being able to be present for everybody because I'm more present with myself and I know where I stand. So it's much easier to relate to other people from another perspective, I guess, or from another standpoint. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Mickey. I can definitely relate to that. I went through a time as well where I had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet, and at the time, you don't really see the end of that tunnel because it is a really dark tunnel. But once you get through it, and you realize, wow, I have more power than I realized by myself, and things I can do by myself. Um, and then move forward. So yeah, that's a great story. Yay, Mickey.
Thank you.
Okay. um, did anyone else want to respond to question 1? Okay, Susan, great.
Yeah, I'll jump on. It's interesting. I've been reading this book with my husband. Um, it's been really fun to kind of go over some of these questions. But when I look at my relationship with my husband, I was 23 and met who I thought was the man of my dreams. Again, these things happen. Quick courtship, quick marriage. And within about 2 months of marriage, he left me. Decided he was in love with somebody else and kind of up and high and dried me, took all the money and left. And you could think that that was a really bad thing. You could think, I was living in a different state. I had no family around, had lost everything. He came home one night and said, we've been renting from the mob and I had till midnight to get out or they were going to come kill me. And so I had no place to go. And you think, God, that's really terrible. But within about 3 months, which is kind of interesting, I actually met my husband, Kevin. And in this book, it talks about sometimes when you see someone and you just know. I was in no mood to have another relationship. I was still married. It was horrible, but I looked across a room and I was like, that's the one. And he looked across the room at me and said, she's the one. And, 36 years later, we now know that, you talk about noble friends and partners and that electricity or whatever it is. He and I have been put together on this earth to do many things together. And I would never have had that if I had not met the other one. And I probably wouldn't have understood the value of a good relationship if I hadn't had the experience in the bad relationship to know that, and I had a psychic once tell me, separating the wheat from the chaff. And, my husband, for those who know him, and he is the best man ever. And so, I could have gone down a very different road. So definitely interesting.
That's a great story, Susan. Okay, was there anyone else that wanted to talk about question 1? All right. Let's move on. Question 2 actually comes from the very next page of the book. I have often, this is Melissa speaking, she's heard of Tony Robbins talk about the worst day of your life becoming the best day of your life as you look back. Maybe for you, Susan, when that happened to you, that was the worst day, but turned out to be the best day, right? As you reflect on this in your life, I would love for you to share learnings you received, the person you have become because of meeting challenging feelings or circumstances and working your way. Does anybody want to?
Somebody Elizabeth had her hand up. Thanks.
Elizabeth had her hand up. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, she said no.
Oh, she said no. Okay.
Oh, I can go if you want. I was going to answer number 1, but I can start with number 2 if you want. Yeah. So recently, I'm a teacher, and recently I was just moved into a different position, teaching cyber school, and it was upsetting at first because I was in the same position for 9 years, and then all of a sudden, halfway through the school year, I'm getting told, "Oh, now they need your help at cyber school, so we're moving you to cyber school." So I took that as like the worst day, like, being told in the middle of the school year, and I had to uproot all my stuff. But it's kind of pushed me in another direction because I also have a doctoral degree, which I haven't used yet. So it's kind of pushed me to maybe look into teaching college instead of, staying in a high school setting. So, and I think if that didn't happen and they kept giving me what I wanted in the school district where I'm at, I never would use this doctorate degree. I just probably would have it just sitting because, I just wanted it to have a something to fall back on. But now I'm being pushed to kind of look for jobs elsewhere because I'm afraid of getting moved again into another position that I don't really want. But yeah, that's pretty much how I related to number 2.
Thanks, Elizabeth. That's a great story, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and
Thank you.
hope you get to that college level position that you're looking for. Okay. Anyone else want to respond to question 2? Okay, Sheila, great.
Hi, everyone. Gosh, I feel like we can all relate to each other so well from what Mickey had shared and what Sue had shared. I was married for 15 years, most of it unhappily. I have learned so much since my divorce about myself. I got to know myself again. I got to find myself again, and been on a lovely journey of just spiritual awakening and growth and personal development. And I am a completely different person than who I was when I was married. And, we were so broken and so unhappy for most of our marriage. And there was a lot of domestic violence and alcoholism and a lot of things going on. And I just wasn't strong enough to be the one to walk away from it. When my husband made the decision to leave, I was literally grasping onto his arm as he's trying to walk out the door, saying, "No, we can fix this. We can make this work," knowing full well it was, destroying my mental health and really just killing both of us slowly. And yet I was still holding on to keep it. And I don't even know what for. I think I just didn't know any other way to live. And the uncertainty of no longer being married was so fearful. But him walking out on me that day was the greatest gift he could have ever given me. And I see that now as a gift because it was a turning point in my life to be where I am today. And I've never been happier. I've never been more fulfilled. I've never had such beautiful relationships in my life with friends and families, reconnected, and just I go to bed smiling every night, so grateful for my life. And if he wouldn't have done that on that day, which seemed like the worst day of my life, which now I look back on as the greatest gift. So it's all about perspective, right? Yeah.
Wow, Sheila, that's a heart-wrenching story. Thanks for opening up your heart and sharing that with us, and just the details you went into. Um, you're amazing. You're amazing. Okay. Anyone else want to talk about question 2? Welcome, BKULP.
I
I
didn't
didn't
prepare so
prepare
well
so well
for
for
the
the
technology
technology
tonight. I
tonight.
apologize. I might only
I
be
might
on
only
for
be on for I wanted to
There you
remind
go.
yes, I wanted to remind you that if you want to speak, you have to unmute yourself, which is generally in the lower left-hand corner of your personal box. Okay, and I learned to unmute myself. It's a slow learning curve for me. Okay, so let's move on to question 3. Um, Grace and charism, I guess, right? We say charisma, so this must be charism. Um, have you made a decision inspired by grace from the divine that allowed yourself to open to healing forces and recognize your own potential? What did that experience feel and look like or sound like to you? Anyone want to? Okay, Gail, great, thank you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was, well, I first of all met Susan in Nepal, which was a really great experience and really set me on a path of finding out where I really wanted to be. But coming back, I also reconnected with the church, which is something I really pushed to one side and really just give up on my spiritual side. I didn't want to know. And this time last year, I actually got baptized again, fully baptized, fully immersed in a creek. And yeah, there was just something about that whole day that I suddenly knew that this is where I should be and this is what I should be doing. I still have a lot of fine points to pick out, and since then I actually lost my partner in January, and I've now moved back in and become a full-time carer for my mum. So finding myself is still going to be a journey, but I think with this book and just with having faith in God, I know that all these decisions are being made for a reason, and one day the reason will show itself. So yeah, that's sort of where I am at the moment. It's a big learning curve, I think. And I'll turn 60 next year. My gosh. So yeah.
That's another amazing story, Gail. I think I better make sure I have tissues around here because I'm getting a little teary here listening to these amazing stories, and the fact that you're sharing them with all of us is just, it's just strength in itself. It shows the strength that you have from what has happened in your life. Anyone else want to respond to question 3?
I just like to jump in and tell Gail that she has a completely different aura around her than when we were roommates in Nepal. You know, she was definitely, you were on a path, Gail. You knew you were looking, and you know, you wonder about putting people together. But when you look at Gail's energy right now, it's just a completely different energy than it was in Nepal. It's got brightness and lightness, and so it's really great to see your face. And unfortunately, you're in Australia, so I'm not sure when I'll see you again. But it's definitely, you know, when you think about that in the spiritual journey and sacred contracts, you can see that Gail's on the right road just from her face and the energy around her. It's really cool.
I call that countenance. Oops. I don't use that word very often, but when everything about someone has transformed inside and outside, that's their countenance. And Gail, congratulations on getting baptized and turning 60. 60 is a fabulous year. Been there, done that.
And by the way, Gail, did you say what time it is in Australia now? I didn't hear that.
It'll be 11:24, but on Friday. So you've still got the morning to wake up to. I've already woke up to it, and it's a beautiful day. So I hope yours is as well. We've had a lot of rain, so it's good to see the blue sky.
Yeah, speaking of weather, I should mention before I hopped on, I'm in northeastern Pennsylvania. We had this really loud thunder, this wind. I thought there was a fighter jet flying over our house. So if I like all of a sudden cut out, I just want to warn you that's what it is. We've lost power. So okay. Anyone else on question 3?
Sure, I would love to jump in here.
Great.
I apologize. My my computer did some kind of update and my camera is not working. I hate not being visually present, but anyway. Yeah, I'm getting a little teary-eyed here too with some of these, Diane. I don't feel like I have that huge moment, but with this question here, that inspired by grace from the divine, I feel like I get that in little subtle ways often. So as an example, many years ago, I walked into a used bookstore, and on the shelf on a front aisle was the book, The Celestine Prophecy. The book has a plain blue-green cover and the words, There's nothing attractive about this book. And it was one of those things that just kind of jumped off the shelf. And I walked by it, and I don't know how many times I walked by it. I couldn't stop looking at it, and it made no sense. And it was one of those times that I'm like, okay, clearly I have to read this book. And in bookstores, that's often happens. But I was really struggling I was raised Catholic. I was very frustrated with what I was seeing around me. I was one of those young people that was like, well, I was raised Catholic, but I'm a spiritual person, because I didn't feel like I was lacking a connection to God. I felt like I was lacking a connection to the church. Anyway, this book jumps out, and I go home and absolutely devour it. And it just felt like it brought a little, it just spoke to where I was at the time and opened up my eyes to even kind of dealt directly with the church, like with the Catholic Church. So it was kind of funny. I had no idea from the cover. And it was more of a fable than an actual story, but it actually led me on a journey I would say that is the first book that kind of led me on a journey toward more personal development in my life, period. I was probably in my young 20s. So that's my little example just of things that pop out and I can't ignore. And I have no idea why at the time, but they just answer a question I've been looking for. See, with no camera, you can't see I'm done.
Okay, yeah. All right. Thanks for sharing, Elaine. Yeah, definitely we can be changed by books we have read, and I think we can all relate to that. That's a really great story. I like the idea that it was going to jump off the shelf if you didn't take that book. Okay. Anyone else on question 3 want to discuss something? All right, very good. Let's go to 4. Related to page 27. Did you ever receive a divine form of grace in a time of need, which gave you spiritual stamina and direction? Mickey, you wanted to speak? Okay, great.
Sure. So my dad was in a really bad accident. He was burnt. And it actually happened over in the States, me being in Ontario. But he was burnt, and luckily he was in the best place at the worst, or I guess the best place at the worst possible time. But he was in a very good spot because he was closest to the most amazing burn unit in Saginaw, Michigan. And he was able to get artificial skin, which he probably would not have gotten through OHIP. So he happened to be just where a ambulance was circling around, and basically where he was, he got found very quickly and brought to the burn unit. And so we went through a lot of turmoil in our lives at that time. But the one time so he had 13 surgeries. Like when he finally came back to Canada, he had 13 surgeries, survived them all. And then we found out he had lung cancer. So we had to battle that one as well. But, the one time I was really, really down at work, and I really needed to, I had my dad on my mind, and I work with patients and I do cardiac studies. But I had a patient, it wasn't even my shift. I was supposed to be scheduled on a camera, and we switched shifts with one of my coworkers. And I walked into the room and this patient was all set up and he looked exactly like my dad. He had the burns in the exact same spots and my dad's face was all deformed from burns. And this patient looked exactly like my dad. I just froze and my jaw just fell. And I was like, and then we had this conversation during the whole entire stress test. And I almost felt like I was talking to my dad, and he had kind of, chit-chatted about things that my dad, because he was a farmer, would never really speak to us about. But this gentleman really opened up because we were just chit-chatting. And from that day, I was like, I wasn't even supposed to be with this patient at the time, but just the way things worked out, I just felt that day somebody was really putting me in a right position at the right time to speak to this gentleman. And he really helped me kind of ease the burden I had that day. So, yeah.
Well, we're glad you met that man on that day. He was able to help you. Okay, did anyone else want to comment on question 4, I'm sorry, we're still on. Okay, let's move on then to question 5. During an epiphany, your relationship to God is transformed from one of fear or doubt into one of deep trust. Describe a time you had an epiphany experience where your relationship to God was transformed from fear or doubt into one of deep trust. Okay. Mickey raised her hand.
Yeah, it kind of rolled in together. This was one that really kind of, it just sent chills down my spine actually when I figured this out. So when my dad was in Saginaw and it was 3 days after the accident, because the day the accident happened, I just dropped everything, went down. We had to come back and get some clothes and all that. And I'm the only one in our family of 5 kids that work in a hospital. So my mom was always, can you kind of be there? And everyone at work was great and let me go. But I came home to get some clothes because I had nothing. We had no toothbrush, nothing, whatever. We just bought stuff when we came down. But I just wanted to come home and get some stuff. And I got a phone call and my dad had coded. And so I went down and everything turned out at the time. And then after we lost him, after his lung cancer, I figured out he passed away on the same date that he coded, 9 years later. And I was I was just like, wow, there is a program here that, things do happen, but there always seems to be, I don't know. I always say jokingly, we come with an expiry date. It might not have a year or whatever, but we come with an expiry date and we don't know when it is, but we just have to go through life and be on our journey and live it.
No coincidences, right? Okay, anyone else want to tell us about an experience where you were filled with fear and doubt, but then you came into a place of trust? Susan, great.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you sit back and you decide to just let life happen, back in 2013, I was introduced to a gentleman. Well, I'd met him before then, but Gary Young from Young Living Essential Oils was running a World Peace Caravan. And when I had heard about it, it just immediately hit my heart. I thought it was one of the most interesting things I'd ever heard about. I'd seen him speak on it, and it kept coming back in my mind. And again, something completely out of my comfort zone. It was a camel caravan from Petra, Jordan to Jerusalem, Israel. We were trekking across the desert, and I do a lot of community service, but had never anything like this. But I knew I wanted to get involved, and I wasn't quite sure. And we were in New York at a particular event, and he was there, and I had my resume to hand him. And I wasn't sure I was going to do it. And I came back, and my sister had handed it to him. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. But I thought, okay, no, that was a good thing. Again, when you keep listening to that back voice, because I was filled with lots of fear. I mean, I thought, I have no idea what I could do for this man when it comes to this. Turned out that I ended up being his director of operations and spending a lot of time in the Middle East, and completely pushed me out of my comfort zone in doing many things. I mean, I met the Dalai Lama, I met Shimon Peres, I traveled through deserts, but so many times you wondered, you had to trust that you were on the right road, which we were at the time. It was the fact that there was too much turmoil in the Middle East that actually we had to cancel. But when you look at your sacred contract and going forward, because of that, we had some youth ambassadors. We then took them to a different program. And as of today, my family, my husband, my two kids, and I own our own nonprofit, all based on all of these things that happened. And in listening to that voice where there's always was a little doubt, and you knew that someone was coming through to you saying, no, you're on the right path. You're on the right path. So a lot of doubt, a lot of fear. But today, 7 years later, we leave tomorrow for Guatemala. We're building 12 homes. This will put us over 60 homes and kitchens and playgrounds and libraries. And so it's amazing when you finally understand and listen and come out of that uncomfortableness of saying someone pushing you into a direction, although you want to go, you've got that fear. It is really interesting. And it's something I encourage everybody to listen to.
That's well said, Susan. And learning to trust. I know my daughter and I have been working on this. And when you do that moon ritual, I don't know if any of you do it, where you let go of things you need to let go of. We both usually have that on our list, that we need to let go of distrust, replace it with trust. So recently we were together last week for Thanksgiving, and she has a new necklace, and it's just plain silver, and in the middle of the necklace it has TRUST. I said, "Oh, where did you get that? I want to get one." She said, "Oh, I had it custom made." I said, "Okay, well, order me one." We all need to be reminded. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to share about when I had COVID at the end of September. It really was, and I've heard people say this, that the Delta variant was satanic. They felt like it was satanic in nature. Fortunately, I didn't hear about this until afterwards, but I will tell you, I was never afraid of COVID until about the third or fourth day, and I could not get in a position where I could breathe. And that scared me. And I just kept calling out to God, and he strengthened me. He strengthened my faith. And I was just able to say, "Not today, Satan. You're not getting me today. You might want to come back tomorrow. I'm not crazy about it, but you ain't getting me today." And that totally came from God, because I didn't have the strength to muster that up. I was out for the count. So by the time I realized it was COVID, it was too late to get the antibodies. So I was just going to suffer through it. And I did. But I did not suffer through it alone. I suffered through it with the Holy Spirit strengthening me throughout the entire process.
That's a powerful way to learn trust, Kathy. Thanks for sharing your experience with us.
Well, I'm grateful that I knew about being able to trust God before. I'm so grateful that I had that relationship going into that sickness.
For sure. Okay. Looks like I just wanted to do a time check here. It looks like we have about 20 more minutes. So I'd really love to hear from some of you other people as we move on to question 6. Talking about recurring pattern in your life that you would like to see from a different perspective. You don't have to see it differently yet. In fact, just recognizing it as an area you may feel stuck and having the intention to see it differently is possibly the most important step in seeing it differently. It puts it in the RAS of our brain and invites the brain to choose a different 134 out of 2 million bits of information regarding that. So, who would like to talk about a recurring pattern that you would like to see from a different perspective, trusting that, yeah, we have
I just wanted to say something.
power within our brain to choose a different.
Oh, can you guys hear me? I know that question, some people are probably like, what is she talking about? The RAS system, the reticular activating system, and the other things that I mentioned as far as the 134 bits versus 2 million bits that we talked about a little bit last session. I actually made an NLP like class, just a little free class. It takes about 30 minutes to go through. And legit, I definitely I think I'm gonna take myself through it to re-listen to it, because I was in such a beautiful place when I recorded it, and I want to get there to get through what I'm getting, what I'm going through right now, to get a different perspective. So I also want to say, that I'm honoring the place where I am at the moment, and I'm excited to go through it. But I'll put in the chat if anybody wanted that class. It's absolutely free, but it explains all this stuff. And it's right. Like the first step of really just making the changes, saying that we want to, even if we don't know the how, because it does, our brain then knows to start looking for answers for it. So that doesn't make sense. I did the best I could at the moment. Sheila's gonna do it. Oh, good.
No, Melissa, I just want to back up what you're describing. It's our reticular activating system is the part of our brain that once something is made aware to us, then we will seek out the answers or continue to find it places. Like if I, like when you're in the market for a new car, say you want to buy a new Tesla, then you start seeing Teslas everywhere on the road. Once something is in your vision, then you can start noticing it, you can start doing something about it. So I love this question, Melissa, because it's not knowing the answer of how to change your perspective or see something different, but it's knowing that, like, what's a pattern in your life that you can at least recognize that you want to change. So once it's in your line of sight, then you can start doing something about it. We don't know what we don't know. So when we're ignorant to something, how can we fix it, or how can we change it? So once something is in our line of sight, then we can start becoming more aware of it. So thank you, Melissa, for that question. I don't have a comment on it. I will let someone else share a story on that, but it's a really thoughtful question, Melissa. Thank you.
So is this along the lines of our brain doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie? Is that what you're referring to, Melissa?
I feel like Sheila has a better grasp on that question, so I'm gonna just let her answer it, because my brain is like running on like low octane. But it's definitely, so I don't know if do you have an answer, Sheila, or do you want me to try to grasp at straws here? Because oh, good.
Well, I think she was just asking you to define exactly what your question is, and yes,
No,
that is true as well. Your brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. So if you visualize something like who's the basketball player that said he visualized his free throw shot over and over and over again and making the shot, and then when he actually performed it, he was able to do it with much more ease because he had already been practicing it in his mind and making it so many times. So it's, yes, that is true. Your brain does not know the difference between real and imagined when you are meditating or visualizing. That's how we manifest things. That's how we bring things to fruition when it's not tangible in front of us. That's the first step to bringing it to how we want it to be. And
Is that what Melissa's talking about?
Yes, that's exactly it. I just when you said true versus untrue, I went for a loop, but real and imagined, that's exactly part of the whole reticular, yeah, how the brain works.
What a great discussion. Thank you, Sheila, for your wisdom. To be honest, I had never seen RAS before, so I'm glad I'm glad you knew, and you definitely speak from a place of wisdom and knowledge. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's move on. Question 7. Personal reflection. When you do not see or need approval, you're at your most powerful. You are doing harm to yourself by being what you think you should be, so someone approves of you. Compromising who you are to gain approval of another is a very precise example of giving away a piece of your spirit. Anyone want to comment on that question? I guess it's not really a question, but was there a time, as you reflect on your own life, where maybe you didn't need approval at the time, but you seemed to be very powerful at that point? Or maybe you would say you were compromised because you wanted someone to approve of you and kind of holding yourself back because you needed that approval to move forward with what you knew you had the capability and power to do. Hey, anybody? Okay. All right, let's move along. We still have more questions.
I will say that there's a great quote that I keep on my mirror that says, your gifts are your gifts. And although someone else might also have those gifts, there are more people who need those gifts than those giving them. And I think that's really true when you speak to this, that you never feel that you need approval for your gifts because there's somebody out there that needs what you have to give, and they're going to be grateful for it.
Well said, Susan. Thank you for that quote. All right. All right. This one, Melissa was excited to hear some inspiring shares. Personal reflection. Kismet, destined to be your beloved in regards to your romantic partnership and spiritual transformation. Anyone want to talk about when they entered into a romantic partnership and had a spiritual transformation? I think that's what she's saying.
I think it kind of goes along with what Sue was talking about too, like how when she first met her Kevin. So I don't know. I would love to hear any other like inspiring goodness in this realm as I'm
Melissa, you
excited.
need to share your inspiring story of the work you did
Oh,
around to find your man that you are dating now, because it's a beautiful story. I think you should share it.
oh, honey. I I feel like I don't even quite see it that way yet. I feel like it's just so new. I don't know what I don't I don't see it from the perspective you're talking about yet. Although, yeah, what are you I
It,
my
it,
brain.
it was a journey for you of self-discovery and growth to be able to have the vibrational match to call in the person that you're with now, who is like no man you've ever dated before, and you have the most beautiful relationship of your adult life that you've ever had. And I think that is kismet.
All right, between that and Diane calling me a noble friend earlier, I'm just like, crying all over again. I love you guys. I'm gonna mute because I can't hold it together. But I legit love you guys.
Okay, I'll tell you a story about how my husband and I met, and my beloved, my husband. So as Melissa knows, my husband's a professional musician. Um, Actually, he plays trombone, and one time Melissa came to see him perform, and Melissa played his trombone and marched around in that club. It was such a fun night. Um, but as the story goes, I was working as a waitress in a club where he was performing, and on the breaks, we would begin conversations. If I wasn't real busy, he would come back, we would have a conversation. And I had been hearing about this concept of flow, and many of you are probably familiar with it. Like when you're so into something, it just all comes naturally and flows. So I was saying to my husband, um, to be, when you play that trombone, and Melissa would testify, about this. When you play that trombone, it just flows. It's so natural, and it seems to be effortless. And he said, well, I've heard of that concept too. Never really thought about it in terms of myself. But I said, this is what I see. I see you performing on the stage. This is what I see. And that was the beginning. And then we fell in love and we're married 6 months later. So there you go. Okay. I'm going to let, maybe we inspired some of you to share a story like that. Anyone else before we move on?
I'll share one. um, when I was going through all my troubles with my divorce and all that, I actually saw a life coach, and I at first did not want to meet another guy. It was like, okay, I'm going to spend time on myself, whatever, work on me, and but she had, once I felt like I was like, well, maybe I might be. It'd be nice to meet somebody, and she kind of had me sit down, and she had me draw a sunshine, and on each ray she wanted me to write what qualities she wanted, that I wanted to see in a man. And I met a guy through a friend of mine as well, and if it's one of those things too, where if we both didn't know her, we probably would not have met either. But we're just meant for each other as well, and he fits every single sun ray of my sunshine. So it's pretty amazing how that happens.
That's your reticular activating system.
Correct.
You
Yes.
put out there exactly
Yeah.
what you wanted, and then you were able to see it in that person, and you found it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for circling back to that, Sheila. That difficult concept, it's becoming really clear now. Okay, we're going to move on. If anyone wants to speak now about your kismet before we move on. Okay. All right. Question 9. It's an example of how wise teachers' advice reshape their path. Would love to hear a share of a sacred contract meeting or significant words of advice that pivoted your path. This would be through a teacher or mentor.
Not actually a teacher, but I could say a mentor, but more of a friend now. But I met Jackie, who dreams of being a life coach, but has never quite got there, but is an amazing life coach anyway. And I met her and was introduced to Young Living, and also introduced to a guy called Alan, and also Gary Young, who is a very inspiring man, even though he has left us. But it was after I met Jackie that I actually realized that there was a different path that I could go. Up until then, I was very much my partner's partner. He was very dominant. I didn't see it at the time, but he was very choosy about who I saw and who I didn't see. Luckily, he accepted most of the positive people that I finally picked up, but he didn't want me to see the negative people. And I think that was sad, because I think I've also learned so much from those people, and they've crossed my path for a reason. But yeah, meeting Jackie, I think really did change my whole focus, and we've done a lot together. And yeah, I think she just came into my life at the right time, just when I needed to start exploring. And as I say, I'm still very much exploring who I really am and where I'm destined to go. And it's also great to watch her journey as well. And as I say, Susan mentioned Gary Young, and I think his philosophy is, if you're not living on the edge, you're not living. And that is a very, very, very hard lesson to learn, but I think it's a very important lesson to learn, because yeah, if you're not living on the edge, if you're not actually trying to find not what you're doing wrong, but why you're not satisfied with the path you're on, so you can actually find where you've deviated, or sit back. I mean, I find my biggest thing is I don't sit back and let it happen. I try to make it happen. I've always been the fixer, and it's going to be interesting to find out where that comes into my life, because it's still very much, it's probably one of the things that maybe I need to change, because yeah, I've always been a fixer, and maybe I'm not meant to be fixing. So, but yeah, just meeting that person just changed my whole thinking, and I think that's pretty amazing.
Thank you, Gail. We're glad you met Jackie. All right. Well, guess what? It's 9, and we had said it would be an hour, so we're going to wrap things up here. I appreciate everyone coming and joining in this wonderful discussion we had tonight. This great book. We have lots more to go and learn from reading this book. If you have any further thoughts about these questions. If anything resonated with you and you'd like to write it down on Facebook or email Melissa, please do that. And please go to Facebook or send Melissa an email about your date that you would like to meet in January. She's asking us for input on what date we choose to have our next discussion. So I'm going to mute myself and see if Susan has any final thoughts here. Thanks.
And thank you so much, Diane, and everybody for being so understanding of everything. And if anybody wanted to stay on and just be social, and chit chat too, I'm happy to keep the Zoom group open for sure. And I'll let Sue wrap things up. I know you're going to Guatemala. Is that right, Sue? I don't know if you wanted to share that, but we could chit chat socially. I'll stop the recording in just a little bit, but I'm excited. Yeah. I love you guys. I'll figure out how to get my brain working again.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. That was awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for everybody for sharing. It's so powerful to hear other people talk and hear your experiences. I know some people are a little shy about doing it. Don't be shy. We're a safe group. So, it's an opportunity maybe for you to explore a new part of yourself as well. So, we look forward to other conversations. As for January, Melissa is going to put out an option of a couple of dates. It'll be closer to the end of the month because most people are trying to wrap things up at the beginning of the month. So we'll look to do it closer to the end, and we'll get something out within the next week. It is chapter 2. We'll do the whole chapter. And just quickly to wrap up, we have my husband, my 2 kids, and I have a nonprofit called Helping Hands, Grateful Hearts. We build homes in Guatemala. We're inspired to do that through my work with Gary Young. And this year marks over 60 homes, 2 school kitchens, a community center, a playground, an early learning center, and meeting great folks and doing great things. So we're excited to go. We'll be down there for 17 days. The build is actually about 4, and we work with the family side by side. They help us build the homes. So it's a very one-on-one, hands-on experience. And we work with a wonderful organization down there that takes really good care of us. So we're taking a team of 15 down there this year. So it's very fun. So thanks for asking. And yeah, thank you. And we look forward to going back and just always come away with so much more. You think that you're giving, but you are receiving so much more than you could ever give, which is just amazing. So thank you, everybody. And yep, you feel free, like Melissa said, to stay on. Diane, again, thank you. And we'll see you guys. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Stay on the Facebook page, and we'll see you soon.